the Greatest Story Podcast with your hosts, Zac
and Josh.
We're here to discuss and react to some of the greatest stories ever told. We will look at books, movies, video games, and all forms of storytelling to figure out what makes a good story and what are some of the greatest stories. Well, before we get into the content that we want to discuss, I do have a take back or an apology, a slight addendum, thanks to one of my library friends, you know who you are, about one of my favorite stories, which we talked about in our pilot episode, The Pride and Prejudice, which I, as a foolish baboon, made the mistake of saying was a Victorian novel.
Did you just call yourself a baboon?
I did, yes. Okay. Yes, I was monkeying around, Josh.
That was good.
Thank you.
Swinging from joke to joke.
Oof, man. Wow, that's good. So I mistakenly said it was a Victorian era novel, and it's actually a Regency era novel, wow. Which there's a slight difference in timing there, even though, because I looked it up afterwards, some historians do conflate the two in overlapping time periods. So I was close, but it's still Regency, which actually happened from 1811 to 1820, and the Victorian era happened after that from 1837 to 1901.
That's a very short time period. Like I'm looking at, that's 9 years.
Yes.
I feel like it's
the difference.
Mistake.
Thanks. It's the difference between like the country, and then industrialization, right? When everybody's like moving into steam power and the coal and everything. So,
to quote Dune, desert power.
Desert power.
I have a joke for your librarian friend. May I say it?
Yeah, go ahead.
What is a book's favorite fruit? A library. I just made it up right now. That's
really good. And by good, I mean bad. But speaking of good that means good, any good stories that you have consumed recently?
Yeah. So as an update, my wife and I are planning to go see Dune.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dune 2. So we prepped with Dune 1. And about as good as I remember it. Not as like on the edge of my seat, like waiting for a catastrophe to happen. But it's still a really great artistic video. Was really impressed by the shots and the cinematography. Made more sense, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I have a slight twist. So instead of like,
tell us about the twist.
Yeah, I'll tell you about.
And maybe even the turns.
Ooh. Well, speaking of twists and turns, mine has to do with Goldilocks. So not sci-fi. In fact, actually a fairy tale. But I was reading this with my wife the other day, and we were on a myriad of rabbit trails. But rabbit, not rabid, just so we're clear on that. That's quite terrifying.
Trails that eat your rabbit trails.
Run for your life. So Goldilocks, there's actually 3 different versions that began to be created. The original one was quite crazy, where there was an old woman that came across 3 bachelor gentlemanly bears, but they weren't home at their house, and you know the story, and she takes all their stuff and breaks it. And
bakes them into pies.
And no, that's Hansel and Gretel.
I know.
But a good one. The old woman turns out to be terrible, and then she is brutally murdered, but we won't have to talk about that. So
classic fairy tale.
Classic fairy tale.
And then Disney will come in and be like,
that's right.
And everything's happy.
Yep.
Nobody died.
Exactly. So you know the last version of the story where there's 3 bears, but they're not bachelors. They're actually a family. And there's a little baby who always has the perfect stuff that also does not get broken. And it's not an old woman. It's a little girl. And she doesn't die. She just runs away. But she's still mean and bad. So one of the things that's really cool about this is it talks about role reversal and like reversed expectations, because you think the 3 bears, they're the villains, they're bears, they're going to be animalistic and rah eat you, but instead it's the old woman who doesn't actually eat people but is kind of the worst. Breaks in, steals your property, breaks it, trespassing. Trespassing. I mean,
yeah.
Those are the 3 things that we're excited about here at the Story Podcast: is life, liberty, and the pursuit of property.
Pursuit of property?
Yeah. The right
especially your property.
Yeah, we're more Lockean than... Never mind.
Okay, that was good. That was
thank you.
That was good.
There's like 3 listeners that are going to get that, but it's fine.
Yeah. Rousseau.
Yep.
We also like
man.
Rousseau.
Yeah. But one of the things that Goldilocks does related to lock-in and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which are some American values, is the rule of three. So one of the things that we talked about last time on episode 1 was how stories help you remember things. One of the ways they do this is with the rule of three. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. You might think of
the Declaration of Independence.
The Declaration of Independence.
Nicolas Cage,
who
Thomas
steals it. Yep. But protects it.
Yeah.
Probably talk about that at some point.
From Sean.
Is that his name?
Sean Bean.
Oh, yeah, Sean Bean. Yeah. I thought you were naming the actual character name.
There is a character named Sean, I'm pretty sure.
Is there? Okay, I was like, oh, that's impressive. Yeah. I never remember the bad guy's name. I just always call him Sean Bean.
I think he's the gunman who can never hit any targets. And then I think he falls in like the Masonic stairwell.
Yeah.
Or I'm just misunderstanding.
No, I think you're right because I think Sean Bean yells Sean.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah. Which seems kind of narcissistic when you think about it, but it's fine.
Only all of his henchmen
are Sean.
You dropped the map, Sean.
So yeah, really exciting. I would love to talk more about the rule of three at some other time.
Well, maybe we can.
So, story news.
Yeah.
Anything that you have that you're excited about or interested in?
Excited about, plausible. It depends on how reviews keep going. But the new second Ghostbusters, I think it's second. It might actually be the third new one.
No, I think it's the new second one.
Yeah. The one with Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Paul Rudd.
Ghostbusters
Frozen Empire hit theaters. Fan of the OG one. Great spooky boy season material. So I'm probably not going to see it in spring, but that's one that I have on my radar. I had a friend who commented, Jed, this is for you. Tried to fit Sanderson in here. But Brandon Sanderson has a beautiful universe called The Cosmere. And he has some of the best audiobooks available. And we all know that if you like and subscribe, you get a month free at Audible. Just kidding.
Wait.
I'm kidding.
And that's how we got sued.
But Brandon Sanderson actually wanted to protect small authors that are creating their own worlds. And so to kind of protest Amazon doing some shady business things against...
Amazon? Shady business?
Now we're getting sued. Don't listen to us, Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
But he protected small authors by advocating for them, and he actually pulled his audiobooks off Audible until he could actually make a new set of arrangements with Audible and their CEO, and some of their other executive officers to create, clear guidelines and better pay, better ratio for those authors. And he wrote a blog post about how he gained traction on that, and I just thought that was pretty noteworthy. And it's interesting that Sanderson listened to Spider-Man and realized with great power comes great responsibility.
Wow, what a great line. Almost like a mantra if you think about it.
Yeah, watch out for those mantras, especially on Mondays. You never know.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
On Instagram. Watch out for them on Instagram on Mondays.
And Facebook.
Yeah. Maybe even Thursdays. And Wednesdays.
And
sometimes Saturdays.
Speaking of Saturday, there is a band that has a song called Saturday.
Yep, that's their last album.
Yep, but their new, not full album, but their new
album.
Is it their new album?
I mean, it's the album's called Clancy. It's coming out in May.
Yeah, it's not. Well,
they dropped a single.
They've got 2 singles now.
Which I don't know. Are they not? They have duos.
So they're duos. Yeah, but it's not an album yet. It's
just.
I mean, I know the album's made, but they just haven't dropped it yet. So anyway, we're talking about 21 Pilots.
We should get a fresh start on this.
Yeah,
almost like we're going to start a new semester.
Wow, there you go.
I tried really hard.
That's really good. Except that the song is actually
called.
Yeah, I know, but it's more about being done with. I guess it's about being done with the old semester.
Well, I think it's more about not dying.
Yeah, which is most often how you feel.
Yeah.
When you're in the semester, if anyone has done any type of higher schooling at all, the schooling is rough.
It is rough.
The semesters are hard.
You always look forward to getting, hundreds of dollars of new textbooks.
Yep.
Next semester.
And debt. Yeah.
And debt. You too, for probably 250 easy payments. Anyways, but 21 Pilots, they have a great thematic world called Trench, and we'll probably have to talk about it at some point. But their song New Semester has, I'm going to call it a comfortably familiar punk rock feel to it.
I would agree with that. I have only listened to it twice now, once and a half now, so I can't comment a whole lot on it yet, but
I will not say how many times I have listened to it.
That's okay. I've listened to the first one like 5 times already. So
I listen to it a lot.
Wow.
I like 21 Pilots a lot.
Yeah, 21 Pilots is good. 21 Pilots is good.
Yeah. You know what else is good? Patreon.
Hey, speaking of Patreon, you can visit us on Patreon at patreon.com. Look for The Greatest Story Podcast, and you'll find us there, and you can be one of our Patreons. But just like S. Woj, who is the first one to email us, and we're very excited to have responded to your email, to call you out, give you a shout out, and also to encourage other listeners that if you have ideas, comments, questions, or quotes that you want us to try and use in future episodes, give us an email at greateststorypodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah. Well, speaking of liking and following and subscribing, not only do we have Patreon, but our YouTube channel is also hopping a little bit. And don't know who you are. Capital D, Dino, capital S, Soar, 1495. What do the numbers mean, Mason? But little video game reference, little Easter egg. Easter egg. We liked your name, so we're calling you out.
Yep, super awesome name. Thanks for being
on YouTube.
Yeah, definitely. And if you too have an awesome name, you should like and subscribe and follow us, and maybe, just maybe, we'll give you a shout out too.
Who knows? Turns out Space Kung Fu is very popular from our last episode.
That's true.
The boys like Space Kung Fu.
So, Josh, as we're kind of getting into, this is our second episode now, it might be good to tell the people a little bit about what we hope to accomplish and a little bit about who we are.
Yeah. So, my name is Josh.
Hi, Josh.
You're Zach.
Hi, Zach.
Hello. And we just want to be transparent and fair and balanced.
As all things should be.
Like or unlike news agencies.
Oh, yeah.
Don't sue us. Sorry, Tucker Carlson.
This episode is just going to be called Don't Sue Us.
But we want to be honest, right? We know stories are something that transcend all cultures. Every culture, every society tells stories. But the way Zach and I look through stories is through a lens of worldview. And while we don't want the podcast to be exclusively for any set of religion, Zach and I personally adhere to and believe in the Christian tradition. And that's just something we think about. And so that's going to impact how we talk about stories. It's going to impact what stories we do or don't talk about. There are going to be some topics that maybe we hit on, and we might even use words like messianic. We might use words like redemption. And that's going to be a whole loaded thing for us. But if you're hearing this, we do want to emphasize, Zach and I both really want to emphasize, you're welcome to listen to the podcast. Stories are a human thing.
Stories are for everybody.
Yeah, stories are human. They're good. And ethics are something we can share through stories. And so we don't want to alienate anybody. We don't want to push anyone out. But we do want to just be transparent about that.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, stories often point to something beyond just the art form itself. And so we obviously will have cases where we think that there's some type of truth that it's pointing to.
And additionally, we know our audience is pretty broad, right? And so something else we need to hit on before we keep going as a podcast and as a channel is that Zach and I are grown men. And there's content that spans multiple ages and demographics for those different ages. And we know that our audience also is a broad demographic. We know that some of you guys are in your 50s, and we know that some of you guys are in your preteens. And those are totally different.
Very different.
And so, like, even in this episode, we might be talking about stories that are PG, And we might be talking about stories that are art. And that's not us advocating saying you, as a 10-year-old, should totally watch X movie or play X video game or watch this TV show. That's not true, right? We'll probably pause and give some commentary on like, hey, you know, I'm a dad. Zach probably wants to be a dad at some point. And we might share, if this was my child watching this, I would probably suggest this age, right? So respect your parents. Come on, kids. Don't be bad.
Yeah.
You're good kids. Make good choices, though.
Yeah, but don't be like Goldilocks.
Who made
bad choices.
Interesting choices.
Bad.
She
broke and entered and broke people's stuff. She ate people's food. Well,
she did. She even got in their bed.
She got in their bed and fell asleep.
Violating.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised those bears didn't eat her.
Yeah.
I think, well, never mind. I'm not going to go there. I was going to say I think I would have, but that's quite disturbing.
Don't sue us. R-rated.
If I was a bear.
If I was a young warthog. Speaking of young, we don't want this episode to get too old. So you ready, Zach?
True, yeah.
We told the people, What are we getting into this week?
We're talking about why are people drawn to stories, and we hinted at, based on a last episode, particularly two ideas. The idea of emotions and the idea of experience. So how do stories help people process experiences and kind of help us process our emotions?
Yeah, cool. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Okay, I think we're going to start with both of us talking about one, and then one of us will take one, and then the other one will take one, and our classic comments will be, prolific throughout.
Our endless wit and charm.
Yes. Okay.
We need to take that sigh and make it a sound effect. Oh, no. Anyways,
let's start with Dune Part 1, since you recently saw it, and you're fresh to react to it, right? So I think that one of the things that Dune helps us understand and experience, and then be able to think about that experience, is what you talked about with kind of the angst or the trepidation or the hesitation, the anticipation, but not in a good way, of the doom that is coming.
When is the other shoe going to drop?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think in life, right, stories help us process catharsis. They give us catharsis.
Yeah.
And we all have been in situations where we can tell that there's something on the horizon, that there is a wave building, right? You've procrastinated at work, you've procrastinated at school, whatever it is, and like one day you're going to have to pay that bill.
Yep.
And the tab is going to be due.
Yep.
And you're not going to have that ready.
Yep.
And I think, that reminds us, one, we want to be prepared, but two, can help us, kind of decatastrophize a little bit, say like it's not the end. But there is also something humbling in knowing that all people have that sense of, wow, I've really messed up, or wow, I feel trapped, which that's probably another lane we can go. That's my first foray into it, right? You just, the first third of the movie, maybe the first almost half.
Yeah.
Because it's like the fallout of is I guess basically, I'll interrupt me if I'm wrong. Okay. But I'll try to give like a brief synopsis.
Yeah, do it. Yep.
So we're entering into this epic space fantasy world galaxy, I guess.
Yeah.
And you have different houses, and each house is given stewardship of a planet based upon the Galactic Emperor. And the main commodity is a drug just called spice. And whoever has the planet where you get spice, do you remember what Arrakis?
Yeah, Arrakis. Or Dune.
Planet?
I mean,
we could just call it Dune.
Yeah. That's
I was going to say Dune, but I knew there was like a formal name. But whoever owns Arrakis has the Emperor's blessing, and they're going to get buku bucks. So you have a really bad guy, like, epically nasty house.
Yep.
Harkonnen.
Yep.
And they've had stewardship of this planet for decades, and they're filthy rich.
Yep.
And then you're introduced to the good guys. House Atreides, and then they do the whole nice. I'm like doing the thing.
Oh my goodness!
But they got the cool
bagpipes.
Yeah. I don't know if they're English, Scottish, Spanish, Europe,
all of it.
Whatever.
I don't know. Yeah.
But you got Poe Dameron. Just kidding. You have Oscar Isaac portraying the
other Poe Dameron.
Yeah. You have Oscar Isaac portraying the patriarch of the house, and he has a son. The son has some weird stuff going on. But we're not here for the summary. But basically, House Atreides is backed into a corner because the Emperor's plotting with the bad guys, and we just know that there's something that's going to happen. You just don't know how, when, or where. And that's like the first third of the movie.
We don't really know what it's going to be, just that it's a trap.
Nice. This time is your turn.
Yep.
The battle station is fully operational. Anyways, what about you, Zach?
Yeah, I think it's Dune as a whole, as a series, and if you go and watch the second one, it kind of builds on the idea of loss and destiny. And I think destiny I will hold off on for another time. I think there's more things that we could talk about with different stories, or even mentioning Dune Part 2 at some point. But I think in the sense of destiny for a disaster. So is the disaster that you feel is coming, is that purposeful? Is there meaning there? Is that avoidable? Because it seems like as you're watching Dune Part 1, you know that something bad is about to happen. All the main characters are talking about, this is actually not a good thing. This is a trap. This is bad. Everything is building to some kind of thing. And if we survive, everything's going to be okay again. But we might not.
You might not survive.
We might not. And so...
And if you don't, you don't.
And if you don't, you don't. Exactly. So it's this idea of, is the bad thing destined to happen? Is that unavoidable and inevitable?
Yeah.
And I think it's helpful to think about those questions and to see people dealing with loss in different ways. And it helps us kind of wrestle and process those emotions of how do we react when negative things happen? How do we react when catastrophe happens? How do we react when loss happens?
Kind of going off of that, you were talking about destiny. I'm curious. I'm a curious guy, curious fella. Obviously, the books are done, right? The author's Frank Herbert, correct?
Yep.
But I'm watching the movie, and I'm always curious, like, do the Atreides, do they actually have more agency to say, no, respectfully, we decline the gift of the Emperor, and we're happy for him to bestow it on someone else? You know, because, like, I think I get into situations and I feel like I have to act this way. And something I'm working through is, do I have to?
Yeah. Or
am I listening to external factors that are, weighing on me? And do I actually have more agency than I think I do? Right. Yeah. So thinking about, emotional connection, processing experiences, just hot take, I guess, putting you on the spot, Zach. Did House Atreides, did they have to take this deal?
Yeah. So based on the political structure and how it's described, think like Holy Roman Emperor, think like the weird European politics of like the 14, 15, 1600s where everybody's related and they all have to listen to the emperor, and it's like everybody's conniving and strategizing to get back at each other. So it's like they have to, quotation marks, because the emperor says it, but it's also like, we know that this is not actually a gift. Like whenever you're smiling, but everyone knows that you're being a mean person. Yeah.
It's interesting. You connect with history, and they all do, like, say, cousin this, cousin that. Like, it does seem like the leaders of these families are all cousins.
Are related,
Just like every monarch in feudal Europe.
Yep.
Second, third, first cousins. Yeah. A lot of cousins.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
So what about moving from sci-fi, space, fantasy, and moving through that gap of history, but before feudal Europe, into the Roman Empire?
Ooh, how often do you think about Rome?
Wow, so much, Josh.
Yeah.
So much.
Unironically.
Probably too much, actually.
Yeah, unironically, I'm on a daily basis, too. But one of the movies that I was blessed to watch, I guess, and again, I'm not always advocating. This is one of those movies where if you're young, you need to listen to your parents here. But
there are movie ratings for a reason.
There are in this,
even if we don't always agree with them as people or cultures, there's still guidelines that we should follow.
And I will say, the movie I'm about to mention, it has its rating for a reason.
Yes.
But Ridley Scott's Gladiator.
Yep.
And it's interesting because
whenever the monster comes out of Russell Crowe's stomach,
nope, it's completely alien, very foreign. Was not expecting that. And then they pick up my favorite part is where they pick up the laser gun. Anyways, that's good.
Thanks.
That's good. It might even, hatch later. But no, Ridley Scott directed a movie called Gladiator, starring Russell Crowe, and I think I'm going to say this name right. I might butcher it. Joaquin Phoenix.
That's as good as I know. So,
all right.
If that's wrong, please correct us.
Yeah, maybe if we get 5 million subscribers, we'll have Joaquin Phoenix
or the correct pronunciation of that
name on this podcast. But on the outset, it looks like just a typical action movie. But the more I'm watching it, I don't know. I was texting another friend about this. I don't know how often movies.
You have other friends?
I do. Sorry,
that's mean. We should not.
I'm breaking up with you. But we were texting, and just the question of how often do movies get super deep on purpose and bring up just a wealth of themes, or how often it's an accident, we're just giving them way too much credit. But Gladiators were in those movies where it was rich and profound, and I felt a lot of different things as a human watching it, ranging from inspiration to absolute devastating betrayal. Yeah. You've seen the movie?
Yes? Yeah. We own it. It's in my drawer over there where they have no idea where I'm referring to.
Yeah. And so the characters in it, it's loosely, again, synopsis-wise, based off of the aftermath of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, which most historians hold to be the absolute end of Rome's golden era, where he was the last really good emperor. He wrote a book. This is a real historic character, real primary source document, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, based off of Stoic philosophy. He's a Stoic philosopher. And this is where fact bleeds into fiction, but the general idea is that Marcus Aurelius sees that Rome is gilded, it's corrupt, it looks pretty on the outside, absolute bantha poodoo on the inside.
Yep. That's an exact quotation.
Yeah. As Marcus Aurelius once said, did you step in bantha poodoo? Slimo. Anyways, but his son, he knows, is basically a personification of everything wrong with Rome. And so that's contrasted with Russell Crowe, the main character, the protagonist, Maximus Meridius. I can't remember the last part.
Maximus Awesomeness, I think is his name.
Where does it go? My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North.
Father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Maximus is everything the Republic was. And so you're seeing like probably some themes where you have the past warring with the present. Mm-hmm. You have ideals warring with reality. And so it sets up these two guys. And Marcus Aurelius unfairly or accidentally, I guess, probably pits them against each other because he says, one is my real son and is a disaster. One I treat like a son and I wish was my real son, I believe is like an actual quote. And it sets up this conflict. And so let's talk about betrayal. Let's just go, for the jugular, just like Russell Crowe in this movie. But yeah, Zach, betrayal. Yeah. How does this movie help us cope with betrayal?
Yeah, well, first we see it. The first thing we see is we're introduced to the son, who's a phenomenal actor, but is awful from the beginning. Mm-hmm. We despise this person, and we see, without Marcus Aurelius telling us that he is what's wrong with Rome, we know that he is what's wrong with Rome. And yet, instead of saying, oh yeah, you're right, Dad, maybe we should work to make Rome better, and I can help with that, he says, hey, Dad, here's a pillow. Let me suffocate you.
No, it's his bosom. Like, it's literally his tummy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He literally holds him to himself.
Yeah. And it sets up
which is like that. It's literally a hug. He hugs him to death
because he's bleeding.
Yeah,
and he says, "If only you were like my real dad."
Yeah,
and like you never hugged me as a child. And then his dad's like, "I'm real sorry."
I'll hug you.
And he's like, "Bleh."
Yeah, that's right. It's.
But I mean, even like the first scene with them, he's riding into a war zone in a chariot. Yep. His men are bleeding. They're tired. They're broken. And he gets out, and his dad's there talking to Maximus.
Yep.
And the son's name is Commodus.
Doesn't he say, "Did I miss the battle?"
And his dad responds, "You missed the whole war." And the son's like, "Well, let me take your arm, Dad."
Yeah.
And then he proceeds to...
Let me take the glory anyway.
Yeah, and he's upset that the soldiers are obviously chanting the leader that was with them.
Yep.
Maximus's name.
Yep.
But, from the very beginning, like, you have this father-son dynamic where the son literally kills his dad.
Yeah.
And it's tragic.
Yeah.
Because not only that, he's kind of killing Rome because in the movie, Marcus Aurelius says, I want Maximus to restore the empire into a republic and undo the corruption. And that dream dies with him.
Yep.
At least sort of until the very end.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it does. So there's betrayal there. There's betrayal later on. So the daughter of Marcus Aurelius doesn't have to, basically is forced to betray Maximus later on because her son is hostage.
Yeah, so you have the sister's name is Lucilla.
Yes.
She has the same, I think its name is Lucius.
Yes, it's Lucius and Lucilla, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And weird, creepy stuff in the dynamics between Commodus and Lucilla. But essentially, he does hold her son hostage. Yeah. And she's forced to betray Maximus, which in real life, Zach, how does that stack up with us as people? Yeah.
Sometimes people feel like they have to betray other people for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. And yet, even if you think you have very justifiable reasons, the betrayal still hurts.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that Gladiator helps us, is to understand that betrayal is a serious thing.
Yeah.
Whether it's a promise broken or a meeting stood up or a commitment not fulfilled, or a slanderous comment to someone that they don't even know about, right? Yeah. You might not be literally hugging them to death, but you're kind of stabbing them in the back.
Yeah. And Maximus takes it like a champ. Like, he recognizes sometimes circumstances happen that are outside of your control.
Yep.
And he doesn't quit, right? He keeps fighting, but he has to fight anyways because of betrayal, because he figures out that Commodus assassinates Marcus, and then he's ordered to die, which the dude just wants to go home for like the first third of the movie. He's just like, I want to go home to my farm. Let me farm.
Yeah, let me go back to my family. I've kind of been fighting a war for a long time.
Yeah, he's like, the dirt's black, my wife's hair is black, let me go home.
Yep.
And he already gave up. He knows the days. Like, he has it memorized. There's this whole thing. There's like 2 years, 264 days. That's how long I've been gone from, the farm. And the emperor says, will you do one last thing for me? He says, yes. So, like, there's also honor wrapped into that. And so you feel bad for him there. He's like, the bro just wants to take a break. He doesn't, because he gets betrayed by the dude who literally, the scene before, says, brother.
Yep.
Right. And there are times in our lives where we can experience that. We're like, we have friends that we're not friends with anymore. Because there's this thing called betrayal, and relationships are broken. And it explores this pretty well. But that actually brings us to the next emotional point of loyalty, maybe inspiration, admiration, true leadership, like an amalgamation of these things. What are some times when you're watching Gladiator do you feel inspired, Zach?
Yeah, wow. Inspired. I think the most inspiring thing, there's two that come to mind immediately. One is, actually, they're both in the Gladiator arena, which I guess makes sense because
the movie's called Gladiator.
Yeah. So the first one is when he takes, this is Maximus.
Yeah.
Maximus really is like just waiting to die, and he doesn't really care anymore. He's kind of lost his purpose. But then he sees all of his fellow gladiators who are, some have experience fighting, some really don't have experience fighting, and he can tell that they're scared and they're basically just being kind of given up to a very quick death. And he kind of leads them and takes them, and they form kind of a band, almost like a military unit, and actually survive the gladiator arena. And I think that's such an inspiring scene where he realizes, okay, I need to lead these people or else they are totally screwed.
Right.
And they are able to work together and overcome pretty much stacked odds.
Yeah, because they're, if I remember right, they're even chained to each other.
Yep. Oh, yeah, that's right.
The rookies are chained to each other because, historically, it's almost like it is. It's a pro sport, right? And you want your best players to stay healthy,
Yep.
to be ready for next season. Gladiators are just like that. Your megastar gladiators, you want them fat, you want them fed, you want them strong, you want them to be able to survive. And so then you make the underdogs, like you give them handicaps and hurdles. And so that was one of them. So yeah, Maximus says, you know what? If I'm going to fight, I'm going to go down swinging. And he saves everybody else that he can while doing so in the face of adversity, which is a human. When I face adversity, I want to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that way sometimes?
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, there's always that instinct of, well, am I going to push through this and rise up, or am I going to run away, shut down, fade away, distract myself?
Yeah. So he ends up inspiring the gladiators. And this is one of those times where I'm like, I don't know if Ridley Scott meant this on purpose. I think it must be so. But he has two other gladiators that are with him throughout most of the story until, there's like a last stand sequence, which, man, last stands always make you feel something.
Yeah.
But I had to look up their names because I don't think they necessarily say it that much in the movie.
No, it's the Spanish guy. And
Maximus is Spaniard.
Oh, yeah. It's the German guy.
Yes.
And the Ethiopian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the subtext is these are people that Maximus probably fought in war.
Yep.
And so you have this underlying current of resisting oppression.
Yep.
And Maximus went from, I don't think he was never like purposefully an oppressor, but for these other people, he's the oppressor to now being oppressed, to rallying the oppressed to take a stand. And I think there's in the second big gladiator sequence, they're reenacting the Battle of Carthage, which if you know anything about history, Carthage is the big, sort of at first, but they're also like the boogeyman of Rome. So it's like whoop, they lose, but they're still scared of them. And it's this big thing where the gladiators are supposed to be destined to die. And because Maximus says, no, we're going to rally, they fight together and they win, which is like a big oopsie daisy for the bad guy.
Yeah.
Commodus, he's watching this and he leans in and he goes, I'm pretty sure history says, Rome's supposed to win Carthage. And we're like, yikes, it's bad. But it's because they band together and we feel something when the underdog wins. So that was probably the time that I felt the most inspired. And I think the sister says something to the effect of, today I saw a slave become more powerful than the emperor of Rome. And there's something about that where your ethics, your choices, you might not be given like a title, you may not be risen, but if you authentically live like a king, you will be treated like a king.
Yeah.
Maximus acts like the true emperor of Rome, and he wins the crowd, but he also wins the loyalty of the officials.
The people. Yeah, I think that's a huge thing to point out, that people follow a leader. And a leader is not always the one who has the title or the status or the wealth or the popularity. The leader is the one who has the high ground, the morals, the ethics.
Yeah. I didn't take the bait.
I know. That was good.
But it's just, Gladiator is inspiring.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just a tragic tale of restraint, right? And when I'm in a situation where I have to show self-control, I don't want to. Right. And there's these extreme situations where you can't help but say, if I was in this situation, what would I do? And again, that's where stoicism comes back up, where I think this movie is an exploration of what could a good empire do? And just the philosophy of stoicism, what could that do to leaders? And so there's a scene where Maximus is just straight up ready to assassinate Commodus, but he decides not to because he knows that that's wrong.
Yep.
And he chooses not to.
Yep.
And then in the next sequence later, Commodus is just trying to provoke a reaction to a character assassinate Maximus by basically bragging about just these extreme, awful violations to his wife and his son. And Maximus, I think, says something to the effect of something reserved that's the time for honoring yourself, Commodus, is almost over.
Yeah.
Right? And he bows.
Yep. He's respectful, but also puts him in his place a little.
Right, there's all kind of eclipses when he has to reveal himself a little bit before this, right? For me, the standout line is...
Yeah, for everyone.
Yeah,
it's
the monologue.
The standout line. Do you want to read it?
You want to read it?
Sure.
You can read it.
I would love to read it. My name is Maximus Decimus Meritus, commander of the armies of the north, general of the Felix legions, loyal servant to the true emperor Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next. Are you not entertained?
Yeah. Well, that flows.
Oh,
it works.
Yeah. So good.
And, we're talking about stories conveying emotions. Like, you feel things because, one, this man is just. He doesn't deserve this. Two, he's, he was already a servant and he's literally made a slave.
Yeah.
And then three, like, I don't know if I'd be that reserved.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an example of stories about emotion.
Yeah.
What else we got?
Yeah, I think stories, they capture emotion, they capture the human experience, and they even do this regardless of the theming or the genre or the artistic style. Mm-hmm. So we've gone sci-fi, we've gone historical, like alternate history, action, drama, intrigue. What about animation? Josh, have you ever heard of a movie involving balloons?
I believe that's also does it involve clowns?
Just kidding. Not clowns. Not clowns.
It's also a 2-letter word.
Okay, well, you're still describing the clown movie.
I know, but also the movie we're going to talk about,
which is Up.
Yeah.
Up. Yeah, let me just get that out there. Up.
Not it.
Yeah, good.
But Up.
So Up is a fantastic story, in my opinion. I think we might have mentioned it actually in the pilot episode or in episode 1.
We totally did.
Yeah.
Episode 1.
Episode 1, yeah. So we'll leave a link to the description of episode 1. Or link to episode 1 in the description.
A path you could take.
You could take if you can find it.
More of that to come.
Okay. So in Up, brief synopsis, right? You have this beautiful opening. The first, it's probably 5-10 minutes in the movie. It might be longer than that. That is almost completely silent with just music and a series of scenes that depicts the relationship between the main character, Mr. Fredrickson, and his wife. And they go through life together from when they were kids all the way to when they're older. They fall in love. They get married. They have their own struggles and hardship, which they portray the difficulty of infertility without even mentioning words or they just show it so beautifully
in a kids movie.
And then his wife dies and you're like, what the heck is this movie? I have literally just been on an emotional roller coaster.
You feel like you watched
I watched a whole movie. I'm ready to go home and cry. So instead the movie just begins and the whole movie deals with Mr. Fredrickson trying to process what to do now that his wife is gone. And it introduces another character who is kind of a lovable, dorky kind of
scout.
Is he an Eagle Scout? I think he's...
No, it's not
an Eagle Scout. He's like
nature patrol, wilderness
explorer. Is that right?
I think that's it.
Is that right?
I think that's
Eventually it would come to me. Yeah,
I could see the banner.
Yep.
Like it's orange.
I can see. Yep, with orange and yellow.
He's
the
got
badges.
like the fake mirror badges.
Yep. So,
Russell,
the wilderness explorer.
Not Crow.
Caw, wrong.
Yeah. You got the whole hand motion. You guys can't witness the hand motions.
That's true. I did.
But Zach's got
some hand motions in there. Yeah. So the whole movie is Mr. Fredrickson and Russell ending up working together to, I would argue, to figure out their place and purpose in life. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Up?
I do. I mean, so this is going to be tangential. You ready to go on a pathfinding expedition?
I'm ready.
It's the second time we said that, if you're paying attention.
There's probably going to be a third time. Rule 3.
Ooh. Wow. That was good. But Disney World or Disneyland, if you're,
West
on the
Coast,
other side
East
of the world.
Coast, yeah.
Yeah. They sell pins. And I've gone to Disney World not like a lot, but like a couple times in my life. And I loved collecting pins. Great strategy. Got to catch them all.
Definitely. I also have a significant pin collection.
Monorails
were my thing.
Mine's moderate, but
okay.
I mean, I think they're cool. You know,
I mean, I say significant because they're special.
Oh, got it.
I only have like 12.
Now I'm picturing out like the books.
No, I don't. Okay, I do have the book, but I didn't fill it all out.
Did you ever get approached by grown men that like have
100%.
And I'm like, bro, I'm 12.
One guy totally scammed my sister when she was like 8, and she gave away like a special edition pin for like a little balloon, and I was like, "What are you doing?"
Well, you know,
but she was 8. She was 8.
A dream is a wish your heart makes, you know, and
what
that man.
Josh,
I know.
What does it mean?
I don't know what to talk about it. But you know, I have Star Wars pins. I have Pirates of the Caribbean pins. I have Indiana Jones maybe pins, roller coaster pins. But I also have the grape soda pin, and that's the one that really stands out. And I really wanted to purchase it, but it's like an outlier. I don't really have any other Pixar things. I think I maybe have a Buzz Lightyear one, but as a middle schooler, like it meant something to me because I felt a lot. And so stories conveying emotion, I don't think I really understood it at the time, but we all feel alone at some point. And we all feel like a need to belong. And we all feel like, I think this pressure to some extent, some people wrestle with it more than others, that your worth comes exclusively from what you do. And so for Mr. Fredrickson, you know, his worth was his wife, which, you know, now that I'm married, I get it. Right. And that's a temptation that we can like put our entire self into your family. And like Master Yoda once said, you got to let go of everything you fear to lose, which I'm not ready yet, Yoda. So don't hit me.
Don't come at me
with his stick. Anyways. And then you got Kevin, not Kevin. That's the bird.
Kevin. Oh,
that's the bird.
Oh, I thought you were about to reference. Oh.
You got Russell, who's like just desperately trying to get this rank, right? He's trying to get that one little old lady.
He's got to help an old person.
And he's just got everything in that.
Yep.
And he just wants to also be admired, I think, his attention.
He wants his dad's affection and attention. Yeah.
And I think those were things that I just felt a lot at that age. And so there is something to that where I was even willing to purchase like a little memento, a memento mori.
Remember, you will die.
Yeah. So that's something I think about. And even as a grown man, like that first 15 minutes makes me cry, you know, thinking about Doug in just the moment where he gets sad.
That's the dog.
Doug is the golden retriever. We haven't mentioned him yet with the voice collar.
Yep. Excellent.
Yeah. But like, there's that moment. I can't remember exactly what happens, but I remember he gets sad and you're like, oh, wow, I felt that.
Yeah. He's a dog and I felt his emotions. Yeah.
But I've talked a lot. Yeah. So back to you.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent. And we find, so the reason that this movie connects with us so much, I think, is because we all place our value in these things and in these attributes and in these objectives. And when we lose those things or when we lose those people, we spiral. We spiral and we enter depression, we enter sadness, we enter this deep darkness. And it can be hard to find a way out. And I think that's one thing that stories do as they help us process our emotions. And one thing that Up in particular does is this idea of finding friendship and purpose, right? No one can replace Mr. Fredrickson's wife, but he finds a new friend in Russell, and he's able to find a purpose in kind of being there for Russell. And Russell doesn't have his dad. He has a dad, but his dad is not present.
Yeah.
And Mr. Fredrickson becomes Russell's father figure by the end of the movie, even doing the exact same thing that Russell remembers his father doing with him when he was a kid.
Which one might say they help each other find the path.
Find the path. They were pathfinders together, literally through the jungle, but also emotionally together through life.
And through the streets.
And Up is a fantastic movie. That is one that whether you're 12 or in your 50s, you can see that one.
And cry.
And you should. And you should experience that catharsis.
Yeah.
And you should experience Mr. Fredrickson beating some city executive with a cane. That's a good one. Old guy battle with swords. That's a good one. Yep.
Riding a dodo bird.
Named Kevin. Yeah. So super good.
One more thought. Just thinking about stories as emotion. Just the motif of going up, having your spirits lifted.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of beautiful that something simple and childlike like balloons.
Yeah.
That's what literally picks up Mr. Fredrickson's world.
Yep.
And brings them to a new wild place.
Yep.
And Just thought of that, but it feels very deeply intentional.
I think it is. And it's only when they return back to where he was, but he's in a better place. Yeah. So he has to go through the wild of his emotions with Russell in order for both of them to come to a better place back where they started, but not where they began.
Yeah. Very good. Can you wrap it all up in a nice bow?
I can. So stories, they help us process our emotions. They show us the human experience. They give us inspiration. They help us see betrayal. They help us understand loss and purpose and friendship. And you pull that all together with disaster, with anticipation, with life, and it helps us be together as a community.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that we're searching for is community.
What are we going to talk about next time?
Yeah, so next time we've talked about why are people or why have societies used stories? Why are people drawn to stories? And now we're going to give some examples of good stories. What makes a good story? How do we think about and kind of start to evaluate as we look at future good stories? How do we figure out exactly what a good story is?
Yeah, what is going to be the recipe? The path we're going to follow.
The path we're going to follow.
We're going to find it together.
We're going to find it together.
Lydia,
my wife moving through the background, grabbing Dune. That's going in there.
And a journal.
Bible study.
And no, following the Messiah. No. Oh, okay, you're ready. It's got to make it in the end.
It's going in the end.
Here we go.